All right, Kimberly. I really wanted to tie or kind of go into a little bit of the mom side of you for this interview because for the most part, we're talking to moms and probably parents too, just in general.
Mhm.
Like husbands are welcome, men are welcome. It's fine. It's really just setting up the family um, for the long term. In terms of building wealth, really, is what I am going for, and I'd love to hear a little bit about, well, I will say this. I did kind of cheat a little bit and listen to one of your podcast episodes, and which we'll definitely call out later on. I have it in the show notes, but um, I I listened to your last straw moment,
Mm.
and I really would love you to kind of share that story because you said a lot of things in there that was very obvious that you are here for your family and the success of the whole well-being of it. So I'd
Mm.
love to just kind of dive into that just a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me on here. I'm very grateful for this opportunity and excited to share with your audience kind of some of my experiences. So, I am a physician assistant. I've been in the medical field for about 20 years now, and I had been at a job that I had been in for 13 years, and it was a student health center, so kind of family practice for college kids, and then an urgent care. And I'd been in there since 2009, all the way up through 2023. And we went through the pandemic, right? And that was hard in medicine for a lot of reasons, and maybe not for the reasons that a lot of people expect. It did bring to light a lot of things. And I think we all, as a collective, we all kind of had those times where we stepped back from the pace and really had time to evaluate what our values are, what we're doing. Does our job align with our values? Are the things that we're pursuing aligning with our goals and our vision for our family? And in the midst of that time, we had, and I say we as in the other providers, the other PAs that I was working with, we hadn't had a raise in a couple of years. And we went to administration as you do and talked about it and said, hey, we've gone through this pandemic, we've been here, we've stuck through this, all the hard things that we had to do, and we feel like now is the time to increase that compensation. And in that moment, there was a lot of like, oh yeah, and kind of hesitation, like there's not really, probably not going to happen. I don't know if we can even do anything, kind of stuff. And when we had this meeting, I said to, my boss, I was like, well, I just want to let you know we're all looking. We're all considering other options because we're not happy here. And the response was, fine, go look. You can be replaced. That's fine. We have plenty of people who are looking for jobs here all the time. So if that's what you want to do, go for it. And that was like the first like beat down, I think, that was really like this blow to of like, why am I here? Why am I spending my time working overtime, 12-hour shifts, 14-hour shifts, whatever it is, for someone who's like, I don't really care if it's you or somebody else, And it was really
Hmm.
this realization that I am not, to them, important. I am not valuable. I'm just a body performing a job, and Kimberly Hoyt, is not someone that they actually cared about. And so that really started me on a journey of personal growth and development and looking for something else, because I knew there had to be something better than this, and there had to be something more than this. And I didn't want my kiddos to see me in a job that I hated for years, because I'd kind of been in that spot, and realizing that I want my boys, I have two boys, I want them to go out and conquer life, right? I want them to go out and do
Mhm.
big things, but how are they gonna do that if I'm not? And so that kind of is where this entrepreneurial journey for me started, was in that moment. Like that was that last straw moment. And then the final kicker was, we kind of were negotiating, and I ended up getting a raise, and it was 9 cents, a whole whopping 9 cents. And they're like, and then they told me, like, unfortunately, like, that's the cap. You're not going to be able to make any more. I was like, never, like, I'm done. Like, this is the glass ceiling that I'm at. There's nowhere else I can go. Yep, that's where you're at. And again, that's just kind of where I knew there has to be something better for me, for our family, for our journey, because this is not it.
Yeah, and I can only imagine how just what, like, a kick in the gut it would
Mm,
be after, especially after COVID. Like,
mhm,
I am not in the medical profession, and just hearing about what all of you all had to experience,
mhm,
and then not having, like, I truly I cannot even process the fact that they came back with a 9 cent raise.
mhm,
I mean, now from the corporate world, so I have a marketing background at Southwest Airlines is where I worked.
mhm,
And I did that for quite a while. So I understand the premise of, you do the work, you have a performance rating, you get a raise, or you get paid, or you get a bonus, or
mhm.
you don't get a bonus, or anything like that. Like, so much of the payment is structured to that, but there were positions where it was capped. So I'm like, what
Mhm.
incentive do they have to
Right,
continue on, basically?
right,
So I am very sorry about that. But at the same time, it could be the best thing that ever happened.
right, right.
How does
Absolutely.
your I'm so currently right now, are
Mhm.
you working in the medical field?
Mhm.
So
Yeah, so
you
right now, yeah, I left that job, so that all went down, I think it was in 20, like, the summer of 2021 is when all that went down, and I left in, um, January of 2023, so it's been over a year. And I went to, another telehealth job that, uh, was great. I loved it. It was in lifestyle medicine, so more of that preventative health and, like, actually helping people be healthy,
Mhm.
and it was great, but it was a startup that didn't quite take off, unfortunately. So,
Oh,
yeah, yeah, so I'm working in telehealth now, and I'm actually gonna be transitioning to a different job here in the next month, so just kind of part-time, and kind of working in that space, because we're in that space because we love to help people.
yeah.
That's part of the reason why I got in there, is because I really enjoy taking care of people and helping them to to improve and to find better health for themselves, right? So it's hard to let go of that, because that is the essence of what we do.
Yeah. Let me ask you, so we met at Squad Up Summit,
Mhm.
this past, I think it was March.
Mhm.
Had you been to any other real estate investing meetups, or, like, conferences before that?
So I had been part of another mentorship previously. And so I hadn't been on anything live, except for just our local meetups that are, kind of our once monthly local meetups. So that was like the biggest real estate event that, yes, I've been to. Oh, and I had gone to Pace spoke at in Salt Lake City for the Limitless event last September. And so my husband and I did go to that. And so that was, but it wasn't like, just our group, right? So
Right.
where it was all Pace Morby world. So yes, Squad Up Summit was my first big immersive event. It was awesome.
So whenever you left, I'm curious how your kids handled, like, whenever you go away for something
Mhm.
like that because that was travel. You're located in Colorado, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Yes.
Florida is not close.
Mhm.
And obviously mom is away. I tell my husband all the time, like, I'm like the mothership, right? And like, you don't want the mothership to go down, right?
Right.
With sickness or anything, I keep it all together. So, are they fine? Like, whenever you leave?
I think I have a little bit different perspective because of the medical training, because
Mm,
I worked urgent care, 12-hour shifts, 10 to 12-hour shifts, and, when we started our family, when my kiddos were little, um, my husband had been working in the oil fields, and so he actually came home and stayed home and was actually the stay-at-home dad. And so
mhm.
I think that's a little bit different for us, from maybe some of your listeners, but so from the time my kids were little up until so my kids are 13 and 9. When my youngest went into kindergarten, that's when my husband actually went back to work. So they have been used to me being home and then not being home for, because there were some of those days when it was 12-hour shifts and I didn't see them, which was
Yeah,
kind
I
of
didn't.
another reason why it's like, okay, here I am busting my butt for you guys, spending, a majority of my time here, and, I'm not even valued to you, and I'm, like, all that time that I didn't spend with my kids, it was a main driver for leaving and for pursuing real estate as an opportunity, because I wanted that financial freedom and I wanted that time freedom, right? I didn't want to be tied to an office and to somebody else's schedule, right? And being tied
Yes.
to, um, when can I take my vacations? Well, I can only take it once a year. So
Yes.
that was a huge, huge journey. So my kids do pretty well. My youngest and me are like two peas in a pod. So he definitely struggles more when I'm gone or when we don't have daily, good connection time. He
Mhm.
definitely gets that. He's more that relational in that way. So what I'm excited about though is, as I talk about real estate and as I talk about things and, um, getting them interested in doing this with me. So like I have this ulterior motive of like us creating our own real estate empire together, because I think it would be fantastic to work as a family together. So that is one of the like long-term visions, right?
I love that so much. I also have that long-term vision, and I feel like my kids, especially my oldest, she they're they're traitors inside my household. They are trying to sabotage every part of this goal of mine. Um every piece of guilt you could lay on, you know, we have enough money. We don't need to be doing any of this. Like, you don't need
Mhm.
to go do these things. You don't need to go, I'm trying to
Mhm.
be more active in the local community as well,
Mhm.
in terms of real estate meetups, things like that. So I'm kind of moving. Like, there's a shift in our household, definitely.
Mhm.
They don't understand that even though I have stayed home with them pretty much, they're in intermediate school. I have one that's going into junior high next year, and
Mhm.
so, um, they have a lot. I have 2 pretty much special need kids, and, requires, some mental energy and some time
Mhm.
and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But I'm definitely more moving toward an aspect of, okay, I definitely have a life to live.
Yeah.
I see better for our family, and we're gonna be on this journey together, whether you like it or not. And
Yeah.
so that is mainly the question I had, just because when things kind of change up a little bit, it can be hard. But some
Mhm.
kids are resilient. I know you know that as a PA. So it's more of me having to make that mental aspect
Mhm.
of like, it's okay to make them uncomfortable.
Yeah, one of the things that I've tried to do, my youngest is like this kid's going to be an engineer or something because he is taking apart computers right now. He's breaking computers and figuring out how to fix them. And so I've kind of enlisted him as and kind of planted this seed like, well, I'm doing a podcast. So would you like to help me edit it? Would you like, I mean, he's not at that stage yet, but he's
Right.
like, yeah, he actually made the music for on GarageBand, so for my podcast, like the music that's on there right now is his creation.
Oh
So
my gosh, that's awesome.
yeah, so I find that trying to, like, involve them and share with them, like, they're not necessarily interested, but I can find ways to incorporate them into it so it feels like they're part of that journey,
Mhm.
even maybe if they're not going with me on certain things, that they're a part of it, and I think that's helpful, and I love what you said about, you have a life to live, and it makes me think of, Ed Milet has said this on his podcast quite a bit of, we tell our kids, you can do anything, you can be anything you want. But are you doing that for yourself? Are you going out and reaching for those goals and those dreams that you have? And for a long time, girl, I was not. I was
Mhm.
working a 9 to 5 and just going to work and coming home, and I wasn't really striving for more. And I think what's awesome for you as you get moving, as you kind of get more involved and find your place and your space in this real estate world, your kids are going to see that and they're going to be inspired by you. They may never tell you that, but they're going to
Oh,
be
yeah.
inspired by you, and watching you strive for those things that are important. And then that'll be such an incredible example for them, right? They say
Mhm.
they don't they it's not taught, it's caught. They catch those things that you do, not always what you say. So I think that's very important.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think also the negative thoughts that people might tell themselves. And, I catch
Mhm.
myself doing that and to my husband too. If I hear him say something like, "Would you say that to Ellie?" Like,
Mhm.
"Would you say that negative thought to Ellie or Hannah?" Same thing for me. It's a good backstop to kinda ask, would you want your kids to feel that way for
Yeah.
them, looking at it like that? So,
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing all that. That's really good. I have a question about, you're moving in more into, like, the, capital raising, area of real
Mm.
estate investing, and one of the things about real estate investing is it is unreal the amount of different avenues you can take. So I'm curious why you chose, the capital raising part, and also, like, what actually is capital raising for the people who might
Sure.
not even know what that term means?
Sure. Yeah, I think when you get into real estate, you have no idea. It's a whole new universe. It's not just a world, it's a universe of things that are possible. And when I started in real estate with that other mentorship group, like wholesaling is what was taught. And I had never heard of wholesaling real
Mhm.
estate, and it sounded so, cool. So I was like, okay, let's try it. And I quickly learned like there is no way I could do it. It's just not my skill set. It's not my desire. I did not like any part of that. And so when I got into, I call it Pace Morby World, when I joined the Gator Method and got into uh, Pace's universe here, I realized like I'm good with people. I'm good with connecting. I love I love when I get on a call and I'm like, "Oh, I know exactly who you need to talk to. You need to talk to this person. This is where they're at." So that just became this natural thing for me of connecting and starting to find deals and find the people who can help fund those deals and bringing them together. And so that's kind of where I've settled in. However, I've tried a lot of different things because I didn't know. We have a couple of rentals here in Colorado. And then I've done TC work, transaction coordination, because I was thinking maybe maybe that would be a good way to network and, know who the borrowers are, know who the lenders are, and kind of use that as a tool to connect. I realized like it's just not also my skill set. And I'm glad I did it because I learned a ton for sure. So I've kind of been on this journey too of like, what do I want to do? I haven't been that like rock star that came in, and I've done like 85 flips in 1 month and, done all the
Yeah.
things, but I like the way I've done it and I'm happy with the way things have gone because I can rule stuff out and know where I don't want to be. But to your point, there's so many things, and there's so many ways that whatever your natural skills are, whatever maybe your career skills that you're bringing to the table, can be used in real estate for so many different purposes. And so, capital raising is really that is connecting with investors and bringing them together to invest in deals. And it could be depends on what you're looking to raise for. Sometimes it's multifamily deals, sometimes it's RV parks, sometimes it is single family homes, just depending on what you want to raise for. And it's really building relationships with investors and moving from these very transactional types of capital raising to more long term, building those relationships with your investors and bringing them on this journey with you. Maybe they don't want to be active in real estate, but they want the returns in real estate. So that's a great
Yeah.
way to be involved, right? So, and I kind of want to be that liaison, I guess, between the two worlds of helping those who are like, well, I'd love to build wealth in real estate because I can see the benefit of it. I just don't have the time, the bandwidth, the desire to really be a real estate investor. So how can we meet in the middle and how can I invest with you and move forward? So that's the space that I'm really diving into and I'm enjoying it quite a bit.
Yeah, one of the things that I've really appreciated about being in the Gator method community with you, has been learning how we can get higher returns, for the money we put into, good investments.
Mhm.
But more importantly, we are learning how to secure ourselves. And I'm assuming as a connector, a person who's doing capital raising, you're very familiar with what those protections are that you're looking for,
Mhm.
to offer to the people who are, placing their money, in a deal that you have kind of brought to the table.
Mhm.
Can you give me an example of a deal that you have seen and kind of brought forward to a person, connected them? Do you have any examples of a situation?
Yeah, and of how they're protected.
Of how they're protecting and kind of like what the terms were in that deal. Like what looked advantageous about this that was like, okay, I know I can bring this to somebody and they have the
Mhm.
funds. What was like the return that was promised? Like even if it hasn't come through, I'm
Right.
curious. Uh, a lot of people who are probably listening right now don't have a lot of that investing background. And so I
Mhm.
kinda wanna give them a little idea of what that looks like.
Yeah. So, and this is where it can be interesting because especially with gators, those returns can be higher, but they are riskier. So that's where some people are not okay with that. And especially when you're
Mhm.
investing your retirement money, they may be okay with that. Some people are risk takers and some people are like, yeah, let's do it. And some people are not. So I think that's the biggest thing that you have to know, like your risk tolerance level as far as if you're going to invest, what is worth it to you and what isn't. So if you want something to just steadily grow and make returns and they can kind of double that money over time
Mhm.
versus more quickly, I think that that does make a difference because, I've seen some multifamily deals where, the returns may be over 5 years. And initially it's kind of maybe a 12% return annualized. But when the asset matures or when it's ready, when they've kind of added value to it, increased the value that they can sell it for, and they turn around and sell it, you may end up doubling that money, but it may take 5 or 7 years. And some people are like, that's fine. If the money can just sit and percolate and do its thing, then
Mhm.
then that's great. And if I make 20% of that money over, a, over the time, great. If I double it, even better. But I know it's a safe and secure asset because it's got a lot of equity in it. And that can be very appealing to a lot of people, especially when they're like, I don't want to worry about the ups and downs, or I don't want to move my money that frequently. So
Mhm.
that type of an asset might be some better for someone who has a lower risk tolerance and is okay with long-term steady growth. And especially if you're thinking about it from like retirement accounts or that, you're not touching it for a long time anyway, so it's okay if it takes a while to grow. So that might be a great investment for someone on that realm. Someone who's a little riskier and, okay with different types of lean positions. So, and that's a whole different story. But so and you asked me to tell you a story or a deal. So
Yeah. Yeah, if
after
you it's
Squat
okay.
Up, yeah, after Squat Up Summit, I had met Alec there. And so when we got back, he was raising for a deal in New Jersey, and it was a multifamily deal. And that was, they were looking for $450,000 for a 6 to 8 month term with a 30%, I think it was 30% return. Um, However, that investor that came in for that was in what we call second lien position. So the first lien position. So if things went south and you had to sell it, the first lien is the hard money lender. So the person who gave like the institutional type loan or the hard money loan. So they're in first position. And then so this investor came in as second position. And so that can be a lot riskier because, like I said, if things go south, that first position loan is going to get paid out before that second position. And so some people are okay with rolling that dice, and it depends on the asset. Like that one, they bought it for, I think it was 1.2 million, but they had already had it appraised for 3 million. So there was a lot of equity. So even if
Yeah.
something bad happened and they had to turn around and sell it, both of those loans would be able to be paid out. So, but that is kind of the risk that you run with those second lien positions. But that's also why you have a higher return, because that money is being put in a little bit riskier position. So sometimes 20%, and you have to be careful about usury laws and all that stuff. And I will say, I'm not a financial advisor. I am not a lawyer.
Yes.
Contact your legal people. Uh, so sometimes that's what we can see. But again, those can be very risky. And we've seen a lot of deals in the gated community who are asking for higher returns that have gone south. So some people may not be okay with that risk. So put that caveat out there, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, well, and I will say this is so for instance, someone who so right now, like I'll be 42 this year. So
Mhm.
I'm much different in a much different life situation, life stage than someone who is at retirement age.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
like at this point in time, I'm going to be a lot riskier because I feel like I still have enough years to be able to kind of make that money back in my brain, you know? It's
Yeah.
so,
No, that's good.
um, and so it's just very different, depending on the risk tolerance. You're right. That's a
Mhm.
big, big factor. I will say, after Squad Up Summit, actually at Squad Up Summit,
Mhm.
I was walking around, they had you could put little ribbons on your badges. that represented kind of where you're at, which is actually very helpful because you can kind of see what people are into automatically. And they had a first deal badge, a little ribbon. And
Mm,
so I was like, well, I'm funding my first deal this week. And I guess when I look at it like a Gator deal, essentially, it's just
mhm,
a PML, private money lending, gap funding, just kind of similar situation in the multifamily world. Um, and they're like, "Oh, you can count it." Like, I was like, "Okay, it hasn't closed." And they're like, "You can." I was like, "I don't want to lie to the world." They're like, "You can do it." I'm like, "I really don't want to be someone I'm not." And they're
mhm.
like,
Just put it on
"Okay,
there.
are you literally closing this week?" "Yes, it's closing this week." "Yes, you can have the ribbon." I'm like, "Okay, fine." I got the ribbon. I got the first deal ribbon. Yay! Guess what? Didn't happen.
Didn't
I'm
close.
still I am still I it is mind blowing to think,
Mhm,
it's and this is the thing, it was a 30% return, 6
mhm,
months. That is
mhm.
very appealing, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's great.
April. So, yeah, uh, that ended up falling through. They quickly moved it into a different multifamily in the same city. All was well, moving along, chugging along. Was supposed to close like 2 weeks ago, last week, yesterday. Nope, not happening. Now it is next Friday is the new date.
Mhm,
And so I have to stop and think and just be like, okay, realistically, I have had my money allocated since April uh,
mhm,
for this deal. And it was an old 401k that I had from my previous job, and we rolled it over into a self-directed IRA, and it's just sitting there. And
mhm,
I've passed up on other opportunities because that 30% for 6 months is just so enticing, right?
mhm. Yeah.
And I've already it took forever for us to get the green light to wire the money. That's another safety thing that we talk about, with
Mhm,
making sure that there's a transaction coordinator handling this deal. I am not an expert in paperwork when it comes to real estate transactions, and the book Who Not How. Have you read that
I
before?
love that book. Oh, yes.
Okay, I
So
have
good.
not. I bought it for myself, and then I quickly moved. Like, I read one page, and I was like, "Oh, my husband needs to hear that. Like, he needs to read this." I make him read it. I'm like, you need this more than I do right now." So I am at that stage where we'll see if this deal even goes through. I basically lied to the world, Kimberly. I did not
Okay,
have.
I know what deal you're in, and
Yes.
every time I'm like, "Has it
Nope.
closed?" Oh my gosh. So I feel ya. And it's and again, so there is that thing too, with I had a deal that closed this week that I connected on. Well, it was supposed to close last Wednesday, and it didn't end up closing until Monday, and then they all wired money on Monday, but half of it didn't get there until Tuesday. So that's kind of the other thing is like there, if you've closed on a house and a lot of times that's pretty straightforward as long as the house was
Yeah.
good and your credit's good. It kind of goes that you close on the day you said it was going to close and you move on. So if you've never been in other real estate where oh, this popped up on title, we need to get this
Yep.
cleared before we can close, and you don't know those things can happen, you're like, why is this taking so long? um, so that can be frustrating for some people too. So it just kind of depends on your knowledge base, your risk level, and what you're willing to do. So it's just a matter of kind of
Yeah.
getting comfortable with that, and having someone with you to walk you through the process is huge. So if as you guys start investing, Laura's incredible because she's been through this process. She knows the hiccups now that can happen. And,
Mhm.
once one, like, this is an incredible learning experience for you too,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
you can kind of be a guide for people. And I think that's really helpful is, people may want to get in to real estate and invest somehow. Maybe they don't maybe they love their job, maybe they don't have the time to spend, really diving into being like an active investor like we are, or maybe they're like, at home with those kids, playing the games, changing the diapers, doing all the things, and that's just not their stage of life right now that they want to be in. But they have money that they want to start working for them. You know,
Mhm.
you want someone who has been through this process before and who can help you along through it, so you don't feel alone. I think that's huge, and I think that's really helpful. So I love that, even though this has been a trial by fire, it'll be a good experience for you to have perspective on deals moving forward for sure.
Oh, absolutely, and in terms of how my life goes, it's always the hardest way possible to get me where I want to have that success. So, like, honestly, I guess I would say I don't really want it any other way, because I learned so much walking through
Mhm.
the mud of
Mhm.
learning.
Yeah.
But that is truly the importance of finding people that you trust, who are connecting and who are raising capital for these operators that they believe
Mhm.
in. And
Mhm.
that right there is I'm sure there are capital raisers out there and connectors who are just like, oh, this guy needs money. Okay, I'll go find it.
Mhm.
Um, but then there are people like you and others that I've been involved with where they really take the time to understand who these operators are, what is their track record,
Mhm.
how, if like if I went to you and said, hey, I'm really scared of investing my money, I would assume you would probably kind of talk me through, be like, okay, look, this kind of deal over here is probably not going to be for you because it's going to be a
Mhm.
little bit more riskier.
Mhm.
But I, know of situations where you can more safely
Mhm.
invest your money. And having that person who is walking through, that's the thing. It's like, it has been a trial. And yes, I've said no to other deals that I probably, and also not even just real estate deals, just like private equity deals, that I could
Mhm.
have invested my money in, for that portion. But at the same time, like this is such a relational business.
Yeah.
I have no desire to pull my money away from this deal because I'm in it,
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I'm going to look back and be like, okay, I can't say I got 30% return on 6 months, but I still probably will have a good return, if
Mhm.
this ends up going through. And if it doesn't, well, then guess what? I just move on to something else.
Yeah.
I have no, the people who I'm connecting with, I know you know them. Like I have like no negative feelings toward them. So like the type of person who, if I want to learn a new skill, a new industry, anything like that, I dive so deep in almost
Mhm.
to my detriment.
Mhm.
Actually to my detriment, so I have listened to, I can't even tell you, maybe, I don't know, 300, 400 plus hours of real estate investing podcasts, like over the
Mhm.
past like 4 years, 3 years, before even getting into any of this kind of stuff. And so it's like, when you start surrounding yourself with all that information and just hearing the stories of real estate investors who are just like normal everyday people who have completely transitioned, and sometimes by accident, and then you
Right.
hear their stories of, wow, that did not go good. And this
Mhm.
is how it ended up. This is the lesson I learned. And when you are like listening to that and absorbing it, it just makes me feel better knowing, what, this is pretty normal what I'm
Mhm.
going through,
Yeah.
especially in multifamily. So, you know, I'm not freaking out. It's just,
Mhm.
I'd love a success story to tell people, but
Right.
that day will come at some point.
That day will come. Yes, absolutely. And, you know, the the joy is in the journey, as hard as that sometimes can be. And we see people who are, up here, and, they're in the prime and they're doing amazing things, but we don't always see like the muck and the mire that they had to walk through to get to that point. And so, you know, being able to take the lessons and the learnings as we're going through it, that's the beauty. That's the beauty of this space. So you're right where you need to be. Hang in there.
Well, I feel like you're especially right where you want to be because you are just a natural at connecting people and being just so approachable. I'll say whenever I met you at Squad Up, I'm not it's not like I live to just walk into a room of people I really don't know and just start small talking. I don't love that aspect, but I can do it. That is one thing. You talked about you can use your past career skills, bring your career skills really do translate very well to real estate in general because it's people business and
Yeah,
most jobs are people
yeah,
based. Um, and it's like you mentioned what this is just a really cool statement. So you mentioned that your family was left behind in Colorado. And so you're making this count, like
mhm,
you're here to make things count for it, right?
yeah,
Um, and that just like hit me. And of course, like that's how I felt. Like I'm not there on vacation. It's honestly one of the first trips I've taken without any part of my family with me, for a real
amazing, yeah,
estate conference on
yeah,
my own, and I walked off of that, like, I left for a little bit from our table, and I met somebody else, and I kind of actually just kinda echoed what you said. Because I
right,
was I was talking with them, and I was like, "Well," the whole premise of the evening was to go and network and meet other people. I was like,
mhm,
"Well," like, my gut, my instinct is just to stay put and just sit
mhm,
there forever and just whoever wants to come talk to me, that's fine. I love to talk to you. But I'm not gonna go interrupt people and make my way into their conversation. That just is a nightmare for me. And
right,
so I was like, "Well, I guess I'm supposed to do what I'm supposed to do. I gotta go meet other people because my husband is at home taking care of my kids, and I gotta make this count for him. So I gotta go." And I left. And
uh-huh,
I'm not kidding you that I don't even remember, I don't even remember who this person is, but about maybe 2 weeks later after Squad Up Summit, it was a guy, and he texted me because I guess we exchanged information on Blink
mhm,
probably, and
mhm.
he was like, "You said something that really, changed the trajectory of my whole experience at Squad Up Summit," and it was what you had
How
said.
funny, I love
He was
that.
like, "It just completely shifted my whole mindset of being there, and I just wanted to thank you." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you have to thank Kimberly Hoyt for that," because
Oh, I
I
love
was like,
that.
"What a chain reaction." Oh, I get goosebumps thinking about it. So
No, it's I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Um, because we don't know the impact we make on people, right?
mhm.
We're just kind of doing our thing. We're all just trying to figure it out. Like none of us have figured it out. We're all in process. We're just trying to do the best we can. And so it's very interesting that like that little comment and the ripple effect it had. And I mean, I would have had no idea. I would have had
Yeah.
no
Oh,
idea.
yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing that. And so it just makes me wonder like all those other little interactions you have with people and the podcast moment where it's just like, oh, yeah, like that
Yes.
that light bulb moment that shifts people, and you don't know what that's gonna be, and so I love that, and I would tell you, just be your true authentic self, keep going because, you're going to find those people you're meant to serve as you walk through that life, and so I'm so thankful for that. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome, and I'm grateful for honestly so many of your episodes on your podcast that I've listened to so far. I literally walk away with tidbits of information that I'm like like taking with me throughout the day. So um, I really appreciate the value that you bring there in your space, and you're doing so good putting yourself out there, and you're really inspiring to me. So I appreciate you and the work that you're doing, because I know like only good things are going to be compounding on top of the work you're doing right now. So I'm so excited to see where you end up.
Thank you.
And and I know where you'll end up. I know you're gonna be living out those, adventure dreams that you have for your family, that you mentioned in one of your episodes, and I think that your boys and your husband are just gonna be so proud to have like, be able to see what you've accomplished for them. Um, so I am gonna wrap it up because I know you need to get off and go visit with some patients and get
Mhm.
work done, and I really appreciate because you this is in the morning. I appreciate you very much for
Thank
taking the
you.
time to come on here, and, I'll make sure I guess we'll end it with you can share how everybody can kinda follow you, reach out to you if they have any questions or have some money where they want to put, in investments so that you can keep an eye out for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for allowing me to come on here. There's you kind of said like you're kind of that introvert. You just want to sit at the table. If people want to come talk to you, you'll talk to them. And that's fine. But I think I'm one of those like introverted extroverts or those extroverted introverts. Like I can do it for a while, but I definitely
Mhm.
need that alone time too.
Yes,
And so
absolutely, me too.
it's definitely like you know a, a thing where sometimes that can expend that energy and you need to recharge. So I understand where you're coming from with that. So I want to say we're similar in that way. But thank you so much. As far as for my podcast, it's just Kimberly Hoyt on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram. I think it's the Kimberly Hoyt because there was another
Yep.
one apparently. And then on Facebook is Kimberly Hoyt as well. So yeah, would love to connect with you guys. Would love to learn. I'm starting to kind of shift some of my focus really from kind of what I had been doing to capital raising. So you might see that kind of shift in content and podcasting and stuff. I've been working on a new project that I'm very excited to reveal here
Ooh.
shortly. So it's nothing that big, but it's just my new branding,
Still,
which I'm very excited about. So
yes,
yeah,
absolutely. We definitely need to go follow you so we can keep up with that for sure.
yeah, thank you. And yeah, I mean, for anyone who's interested in learning more about, real estate investing, Laura is an incredible resource. So I'm so glad that you guys connected with her and have have that resource right there. So that's amazing.
Thank you so much. All right, well, I am going to, stop our recording right now, and if you
Awesome.
can just hang on for me for just a moment.